Welcome. Tobias and I were here now talking about Mike Oldfield's album Heavens Open. My voice is sufficiently low
Very
today.
nice.
I don't know what's going on, but anyway. So I was just about to say to Tobias that I feel not perfectly prepared for this record, and the reason is not that I haven't listened to it but I haven't really spent as much time with it as with other Mike Oldfield albums.
Well, that's not a big issue because I'll overcompensate for this one because this is probably, well, it's definitely in my top 3 most listened to albums of his.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think it came at a very particular time. So I still remember the moment I bought it.
Yeah.
And I mean, how many things which happened in 1991 do you still remember that way? So, I've listened to it, almost excessively back then and then again and again over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's now in hindsight, it's a really, really special record for several reasons. Like it's the last one for Virgin Records, and also the record before sort of like the reboot with Tubular Bells too.
Yeah.
And there was a big change happening. Also, you know, like this is the last record that Anita Hegeland is credited on. And like interestingly enough, it's a co-production with Tom Newman, and just like Amarok, that was just released just a year earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want to start? And where do we want to start? Like what's interesting with this record is that we have the songs first in side A,
Yeah.
and the instrumental as side B.
Yes, I don't know if that's necessarily like relevant. It does change the listening experience quite a bit. I think it works for this one. One thing which, I mean, you said it's not something you listen to a lot. I'd be curious, when at the time, was that also the case? Or is it just not something you kept listening to?
I mean, and I do listen to it occasionally, so it's not like like back in the day, I did listen to it, yeah. I mean, as you know, I was always open and Heaven's Open.
Heaven's Open, yeah.
Open to the experience of like, what does he do now? Where's he going? What's going on, right? And just the fact that it's credited to Michael Oldfield rather than Mike Oldfield, and also Tom Newman spelled with an H on this record. It's really interesting. So it kind of like shows that there was some sort of dissociation from it, from that. But at the same time, since he was singing the songs himself, it couldn't be more associated in a way.
Yeah.
So no, I did listen to it back in the day, but I'd never really clicked, that much, I would say. But then having said that, like listening to it now, I don't know. I'm just fascinated again by the fact how like chameleon like Mike was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so to me, I think this is, as I said in one of the earlier episodes, I think this is the odd one out. I think this is a different album in many respects. It does obviously have the same classic structure that Crisis had and Islands had, with the one side of shorter song structure pieces and one longer instrumental. But it's different, definitely in terms, I think, of the songwriting is different. I actually think the lyrics are notably different. The production is very different. The sound is very different. I have we'll get into that in a second. I think this is sort of a concept album in disguise. Maybe not in super disguised, but I think it's a concept album. And it's also something which was done very quickly. Some have, there's two typical theories about it. One is that it's sort of a quick way to fulfill his contractual obligations. If you think about it, how quickly like these three last albums came, but actually Heaven's Open was probably done partly during the Amarok recording. There's almost definitely an overlap. When Amarok was released, like in the chronology, shortly after Simon Phillips came in to record his drums, so for Heaven's Open. So there has to have been some stuff. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about this as stuff which was left on the cutting room floor after Amarok. Well, it's meant negatively, but it may be true to some degree. I mean, there may be parts of this which were maybe even already written at Earth Moving. Wasn't Heaven's Open, the title track actually wasn't that in a very different, like much earlier, also an entirely different song, which was then ended up being Heaven's Open. I
mean, like when you're talking about sort of like an overlap, you're talking about music from the balcony, right? Certainly not the songs.
Yes.
And here's something like, do you know if like music from the balcony was that done in Los Angeles?
No, it was. Well, the drums were recorded, as far as I know, in England.
Because like I'm just a little bit confused because like the only balcony that you see in Mike Oldfield history is the one in Los Angeles where he's recording Tubular Bells 2 or producing Tubular Bells 2, which must be kind of concurrent almost. So that's only I was wondering.
With Trevor? Because the thing with Trevor comes later. So the before he goes to the States and record with Horn, he actually does the early stages with Tom.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that too probably was part of this whole thing they were working on. I think there's probably there's a lot of stuff which happened simultaneously.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, and I'm remembering those videos from the recording sessions for Tubular Bells 2. Yeah, I mean, those who haven't seen it, you can find those on YouTube.
I've thought about that title a lot. I mean, that's already a detailed thing. Why music from the balcony? So maybe the final thing is that I think I keep reading that this sort of a fuck you to Richard Branson. Mm-hmm. I'm saying using that word because it's possibly also used at the very end of this of music from the balcony, and there's obviously the Morse code message in Amarok. I don't agree. I think this album is like if for three reasons. Well, first of all, if you're going to go looking for a new record contract, I don't think any record company will appreciate it if you finish your last term or finish on such bad terms with the previous record company. It would have been much better if this had turned out to be a success for any future. And also the album is just too good.
I mean, like, as always, we're gonna do a deep dive, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm surprised about what you're saying. Like, if like, the first song called "Make" has the word "virgin" in it, and it's well,
it's definitely about Richard Branson and Virgin, the album.
Yeah.
But I don't think okay, that's maybe just to finish up. I think I was thinking about album artists who actually did a fuck off to their record company, and I'm thinking of people like Neil Young with Geffen, or maybe this one, Pat Metheny and Zero Tolerance for Silence. And actually Metheny has completely rejected the idea that it was intended to be a slight on Geffen. But I mean, if you listen to the album, it seems pretty.
It's probably subconscious then, yeah.
Yeah. So and this is a absolutely fantastically produced album. 5 even if you don't like them, they're clearly well-crafted songs, and so I just full out reject the idea that this is in any way intended to be just record anything and get my contract.
No, I mean, certainly not. Just like you were saying, like maybe it was recorded quickly, but even the fact that he had singing lessons,
Yeah.
and it's not something that you do in a month,
No.
right? You got to do that over a few months
Yeah.
in order to actually build a voice. Like, and he does the belting here.
Yeah,
Like,
he-
most of the record is very, very kind of like, even at that time it was to me already old fashioned to sing like that.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a bad way, but but again, it shows like the enormous energy he had to actually try new things.
Yeah, he actually, this is how he describes it in Changeling. I decided to hire a singing teacher, and one day, this very jolly, rotund woman turned up. She folded her arms, got me in the corner by the piano, and we started to do vocal exercises. She would drill me like a color sergeant. No, Michael, up and down. Open your mouth, bring your tongue down like this. La, ah. I worked really hard at this. I had 20 or 30 singing lessons once or twice a week for a good few months. I thought I will bloody learn to sing. Yeah, I agree. This is not something you do for fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and he really only properly used it on this record.
Yeah. I think old-fashioned, I think that is actually a really, really good keyword, because if you look at the arrangements, so the arrangements of all the 5 first songs are very diverse.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes through a lot of styles. But one thing that's almost continually is his vocal delivery, and then there's backing singers.
The sassy choir.
Yeah, and they sing in a very particular way. This has this 70s soul quality, and there's a Hammond organ in No Dream, which really puts me back in that 70s mood.
Yeah.
So he had something very clear in his mind as to the sound and the performance.
Yeah, and well, this is something that we already talked about with Earth Moving. Mm-hmm. That's some sort of soul or rhythm and blues influences were present.
Yeah.
And it's still the case with this record. Throughout the whole record, even the music from the balcony, there are like these onward, I would say, like keyboard brass parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where I'm not exactly sure if they are all keyboard. This is something also to discuss. Mm-hmm. But yes. Also, like, you know, in the credits, the band is credited in inverted commas.
Yeah.
So I also wonder if some of these pieces were actually played in the studio, and even if it's just the basic tracks like bass and drums recorded at the same time. It sounds like that to me, actually.
There is not a lot of band performance in it. I mean, if you give anyone this band, like Courtney Pine, Simon Phillips, what's the name of the keyboard player, Andrew Longhurst? No,
and Mickey Simmons.
These are amazing musicians. And if you look at how little of them actually features on the album.
Well, that's not. I don't think that's true.
On Music on the Balcony, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
I mean.
That's mostly Simon featured on Music from the Balcony. That's true.
Courtney Pine just does like.
Yeah, he plays like one theme that we know is Courtney, but yeah. I mean, like, if I may, already. The pre-chorus in Make has that kind of slap bass riff, and that is the Taurus riff. And the Taurus riff comes from the unison riff in the Piltdown Man. And later, and this is something I just realized when I was taking a shower this morning, it also makes a reappearance as the opening riff on Tres Lunas, Misty.
The album has a lot of callbacks.
So I just found that so interesting that this album ties, or this little riff, which is just a pentatonic simple pentatonic on the guitar. So but Mike turned it into a riff for Taurus, for the Taurus series.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of interesting how this makes an appearance. And again, I think that like really this kind of thing is not and again, I'm not saying it's intentional, but it sort of is.
Sure. Actually, I mean, maybe to explain, when I said I think it's a concept album, I think if you look at the lyrics, I think this the first side explicitly deals with his time at Virgin and the changes which happened throughout his time there, his tenure with Virgin. And I think there's very specific lyrical sections which are addressed to Richard Branson. And I think the music mirrors that in a way. I think there are lots of tiny motifs and styles and sounds which reference older work. I think it's sort of intended to be to look back at this time, to show what they've done. I don't think it's intended to be a negative part. I think he's talking to him as a friend. To me, that's why he's using that's the reason why he's using his name. It's him. This is actually his actual name. And Richard Branson, I believe, wanted him to be called Michael Oldfield for Tubular Bells, as far as I know. And that's why he's singing himself. He's singing his songs to someone very directly, I think. There's lots of, if you look at the lyrics, there's lots of stuff. Make, this obviously about like the commercialization of the music business. And it's a lot about how money takes over and how this sort of disintegrates you as a personality. That's, I think, this idea behind give me back, and then he's actually talking about like his body. It's like it's falling apart. But there's in No Dream, I think there was one passage where it says, "There's a face at the window, someone who you know, or who you used to be. Could that somebody be me?" So I think that's addressed to Richard Branson. So he's look at the person standing out. That's someone you used to be. Maybe it's me. So I think to me it's sort of telling him, look at the friendship, look at how it all began. And then you have Mr. Shame, which is actually a very positive song. It's not negative. It says, "Come down to the river of love and come back." So I think it's intended as a, I don't know, it seems to me like consolation, also like an offer, like a hand outstretched. Maybe it's subconscious, but that's the way I see.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like, as you know, "Give Me Back" was originally called "Fed Up."
Yeah.
And there's a different version of it called "Fed Up." And yes, I mean, even just looking at the progression, so make, no dream, Mr. Shame, give me back, and then Heaven's Open is sort of like and maybe
it's almost a hero's journey.
But also maybe kind of like pointing at, okay, now that the record contract is over with Heaven's Open, like I have all sorts of possibilities, and now I'm gonna look at doing Tubular Bells too.
Yeah.
Which must have already, as you said earlier, been planned or even maybe been in progress somehow at this time.
And in Changeling, he actually writes that he was very sad when he realized that the contract had ended. As much as it felt like the right thing to do, I'm pretty sure he could have, if he really had wanted to, he could have gotten a lawyer, he could have negotiated a better contract, or he could have probably ended that contract. I mean, these contracts, they were...
I don't remember exactly, but I also read Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson, that book, where the history of Virgin is in there. And I do not remember But it wouldn't surprise me if at that point in the early 90s, Virgin had already changed hands, was sold already. So what just wasn't the same. So maybe in this case also the holding on was just holding on to an idea or holding on to a name, really,
Yeah.
rather than a structure or rather than or the names stood for something, or maybe for Mike still was standing for something important, let's say, and that was kind of lost. And in a way, that's what make kind of illustrates,
Yeah.
that it's really not about that content, but about the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's interesting still for me to have the sort of, as you say, the hero's journey, like tracks 1 through 5, and then 6 is just like as an afterthought, or maybe just something in a way. That track, Music from the Balcony, is sort of like the thing in between the cracks.
Ah, you mean, yeah,
It's
maybe.
it's already over, like it's over, and like I'm already looking at the next thing, and then this is sort of like tagged on to the end.
That's an interesting thought. I have another theory, but that's also definitely a possibility, because it's, in a way, it shouldn't fit. I mean, there's no connection thematically or stylistically between the two sides here, but I've never really seen it as an issue. So that would fit, like if it's sort of the aftermath, sort of. Oh, but
Yeah, this is something I was wondering today. Is there really no thematic connection between side A and
I
side
don't
B?
think so. I think there's lots of in Music from the Balcony. I think there's lots of very well hidden. I mean, not lots of. There's a few hidden references to previous albums. I think the Tubular Bells theme is in there, for example. Just slow down. But I don't think with the first side, no.
Yeah, I think there are a few hidden
Okay.
ones. Yes. But what kind of like ties this record together as well is the sort of like amazing use of guitar sounds. Like his playing is on this record is just incredible. In a way, like where he's trying to do the expression with his voice,
Yeah.
which he obviously didn't have much experience with, and then being like his expressive playing on the electric guitar is just incredible.
Yeah.
And this was the time when he was really getting into those sounds that we talked about, that he used on Earth Moving and Amarok already, and that sort of almost like got lost again after this. They were like they made a little bit of an appearance on Tubular Bells too, but it was really these 3 records that had that really special guitar sound, and yeah, and experimental, like experimental guitar sounds, very nice, and those you can find on both sides. That's what I'm
That's
trying
true.
to say.
Yes.
Yeah, and where the first track, Make is purely electronic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything on that track that is a real instrument other than the voice or the voices, because they're also.
Thinking. Well, if we count keyboard as an electronic instrument, then yes, yeah. Pretty sure there's keyboard sections in there. But I mean, the drum parts, some of that sounds almost like from Earth Moving, but then it's much thicker. So almost like techno, actually. It really has this.
What it is, I mean, like at that time, there was like a drum loop, that a sample that people used for what was that band? It was like funny song. You're Unbelievable, EMF person,
yeah.
right? It's that kind of rhythm that here he's not using that as a sample, but it's that beat programmed, yeah, a version of that beat programmed, and it has that South American or probably originally or African instrument, the guica or whatever you call it, where it's scraping with a stick over, and that is part of the main beat in the song, and that quicker sound makes quite a prominent reappearance on Music from the Balcony. So for me, there's like, even just like with that really strange sound that he's only ever used once in his career, and it ties together track 1 and track 6. Yeah.
That's interesting. I actually noticed that only on headphones. So then again, it's something really subtle, but could well be, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying there is. I think that there are quite a few things going on here that we don't really get. And again, I don't want to overcomplicate things. It's not about that. Yeah, I mean, would you like to talk about Music from the Balcony now, or is that too early?
No, we can. I think because this. I'll tell you what I think. What this is. So, so I have. If you look at the way this piece is structured, it's.
People, I need to tell you that Tobias has this written out, the whole structure of the piece here with the timings and then notes.
And the themes. So this was just for my own edification, because the way it's composed, you don't actually realize, I think, how little material actually there is. So it is actually just 6 themes which reappear, and then there's, I think, 1, 2, 3 or 4 which have just one single appearance. There's actually very little material in this, in a sense.
And I think it's probably even less than you think.
Yes, it could be less.
Because like there's one fast thing, which actually is just a sped up version of the slow theme. And
yes, and that's I call that the anthem, sort of that's the big theme.
Yeah.
Yes. There's lots of cross-referencing, and so you have roughly until minute 9. The themes come and go, and then you have a longer section, about 2.5 minutes. In the middle, smack in the middle, is the longest section of the entire piece, and then you have another almost as long as the first section at the end. So you actually have 2 parts which are almost identical length. In the middle, there's a longer jam. There's an extended section. And all of the themes which appear in the first section also appear in the second section. So with one exception, there's one non sequitur in each of these. There's sort of a very short 10-second outbreak in there, which is singular to part 1, and in the second part there's another one.
Okay.
So one could say then that the first part and the second part are identical in a way. It's just how they're arranged. But that's not how the music works. I don't think that's the feeling I get when I listen to it. I think that both are completely different, and neither of them could work on its own. On paper, they should work.
You mean in the sequence?
Yes. If you listen to them up until the sort of the separation point, where there's actually also silence. There's one silence is after that extensive section.
And that's when the ping pong ball comes back?
But neither of them works for its own. It just only works together. And this is why I think it's a concept album. So the first half of the album is all about money should not be it shouldn't be about money. It should be about love. It should be about friendship. And so looks mathematical almost on paper, and there's all these permutations. He switches them around, but in the end, it only works because he does it. He does it in an artistic way. So the message, I think, is it's not maths. It's about beauty. It's about intuition. I think that sort of Music from the Balcony, I think, is sort of intended to be an illustration in music of the idea he was telling Branson before in the pieces. It's sort of, yes, I know, we can talk about numbers, and you can reduce music to numbers, and you can make these schemes, and it makes rational sense, but it only makes sense when you listen to it.
The title, Music from the Balcony, now it kind of like rings a bell for me, because, if you are a producer like Mike, and you will have spent a lot of time indoors, and with music from the balcony is sort of okay. Like now we're taking this music is kind of with the view of the world. I don't know if that makes. I mean,
that was my first interpretation as well.
I mean, and it still makes sense with what you were just saying. So that it's like, okay, it's not the music from the basement, or it's not music from the studio. It's music from the balcony with a view, or at least like the balcony has usually a view to one side, and the other side is the one that goes back in to the building. So it kind of makes sense. And like there is a track, kind of like a track called Music for the Video Wall. It's a B-side from the Magic Touch single. I don't know if you ever heard that.
No.
Yeah. Also, sort of, it's very, it's just a demo, right? It's not produced really, but it sort of has this flavor.
Interesting.
Yes, music from the balcony.
I mean, there's one theory is that it was done very quickly. That we don't know how it was done. That's something which would really be interesting to talk about and to find out. But there was a theory that he sort of did it very quickly by himself while he was traveling, maybe sitting somewhere in a beautiful place on the balcony. I don't know. I think my idea is, I mean, as we know, the best seats in an opera house are the balconies. Those are the ones.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it's maybe that is the idea. It's music from the balcony. But I also have this image of what's it called? Is it the Muppet Show where you have the two guys on the balcony?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe because we know about his sort of slightly personal humor. Maybe it's, I don't know, him and Branson sitting up there rather than the puppets. I think
that's funny.
I think it's a great title because I don't think it's unless you know, you won't know. But it's very evocative. I've always loved it. I thought actually when I first listened to it, something like you said, I thought maybe it's the listener sitting on a balcony outside, listening to all the sounds coming from different like the houses in the street, and because it changes so fast. I don't know. It's
so like my mind is just jumping around here all the time about this album and potential meanings and arrangements, and so you like the musical themes used in music from the balcony. Some of them are just little electronic sketches, let's say, with sort of preset sounds of the keyboards at the time that he had available. And he was still, like, according to the liner notes, still using the Fairlight even on this record. And yes, I can hear that. There are some Fairlight sounds on this for sure. Yeah, MU samplers, and let me just look at it. What does it say? The Proteus, Roland D50 for sure, D550, that rack mount thing, Korg M1 still for sure. Yeah, I think those are the sounds that we can hear, and an Akai sampler. And it's basically, what I'm trying to say is, like, there are like these electronic things that he probably just did by himself, and as you say, he could do those on the road. But there are other sections where the band is playing, where you actually hear the bass player and like Dave Levy or Levi, wherever, and Simon Phillips play together. And I think we also have the Hammond on Music from the Balcony. So there must have been band sessions, and then everything was just kind of like put together, stitched together. And that's really what it sounds like. In a way, a little bit more so than ever, stitched together like a soundtrack.
Yeah. There's no, I mean, there's a little forward movement in it, but not really. It's It's sort of without time.
It's what I found interesting. Like, I would never guess that that piece is 20 minutes long.
No.
It either sounds shorter or longer, depending on how you're looking at it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's really weirdly timed, but I think that's because it's, when I was saying I had the scheme mapped out and I looked at it, except with the exception, I believe, but probably someone would have to make a real analysis of it. There's only two sections, like repetitions of three parts which are identical. So each part is followed. You never know which part is going to follow after what you're hearing right now. So it's entirely unpredictable. It changes very fast, but each change is fresh. So it always puts you in the now. There's no, that's what but it doesn't have this sort of forward arrow. Like, for example, wind chimes. I think that one is really building and continually going back, putting the brakes on, then speeding up again and building, and then going back and picking up themes. This is very, it's very skillfully made to sound as though it just invents itself all the time, reinvents itself.
Yes. Yeah.
I think, sorry.
No. I mean, also, you were saying that there are quite a few, like where he's quoting himself, right? Also in the piece, and it's very, very kind of obvious in the choice of even having Simon Phillips on this record, like how bizarre in a way. Like, I mean, Islands, which was the last record that Simon was on, was only 4 years at this point. So it's not really such a long time. But it feels like a longer gap to me right now, like looking back. But it actually, but it's sort of bizarre because this record really belongs to that 7-8 year period between 83 and 91. Which has the Simon Phillips involvement, and that makes it even more of a bookend in the first part of his career, I find.
Have they ever played together again after that?
I don't think so.
No.
And the so what I was going to say, so there is the finale here, beautiful melody with a kind of a drum solo reminiscent of the Crisis parts.
There's actually a double bass.
It's a double bass drum. Yeah, exactly. But it's in triplets here, which is interesting. So it's not the 16th, it's the triplets. And so it has a sound of the coda in the climax in the track Crisis, but also sounds a bit like the drumming in High Places. Very similar sounds and tone and kind of playing, and it's just I think that the melodies in Music from the Balcony, those that are like meant to be melodies, let's say, they are incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, they have a very, how would we say, Oldfieldian kind of sound, but then they are not copies of anything he's done before melodically, right?
Yeah.
Not carbon copies, let's say. So it's that kind of melody. But as I was saying earlier, when we were, a few episodes back when we were talking about Islands, how he was still finding new ways to write melodies with new kinds of intervallic jumps and stuff. And somehow here on this record, something sort of magical also happens with the melodies.
Yeah. And there's, I think there is a finale, but then of course there's an after.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the original, or like the Tubular Bells side 1.
Yeah.
It's like that, or the first version, the unreleased version of Omadon.
Yeah.
it is really like that. Yes.
I had a few thoughts about the way he writes this and the maybe the sort of the way he was thinking. So more recently, like this was Enigma's first album, 1989. We know that he and Michael Cretu were in touch. Not sure when they started getting to in touch. I just thought maybe Music from the Balcony is sort of, I mean, on 1989, it's all sampling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane if you look at how little of it is not sampled. The same goes for the second Enigma album. So Enigma as a project, I think, gets increasingly worse the more difficult it gets to sample legally, and the more you as a composer need to shine. And I think, in many respects, this Heavens Are Open is his take on that idea. He just doesn't sample. I think he has the license now to use lots of presets, and people have called him out for it. It's just presets. No, but maybe. But it's damn, like the way he uses them is super creative, and the combination of things. So 1989 is, of course, like a German pop producer's take on hip hop. I mean, it's Gregorian chant, and it's ambient music, and it's trance and all that. But I think it's a hip hop album. I think in the way the beats are programmed, you actually hear that still. It becomes more obvious.
I mean, the Enigma album is Mike's Enigma album, Songs.
Yes.
Distant Earth.
Yeah, that is a clear reference. Yes.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of right. And even the way, and this is what I said earlier, that it's a pastiche of purely electronic bits done with MIDI keyboards and a MIDI sequencer combined with the band performances, right? And not necessarily at the same time in sequence, right? And that's the awkward thing. And that's really what I find kind of successful in this composition, that these, what we would, consider to be like a break, even in aesthetic sense, how that kind of flows anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you said before that it's questionable how much of this was actually recorded live with musicians in the studio. Do you think? Because
I think it's obvious which parts were recorded with the musicians. That's how I would say it.
I would probably agree, but even then, those parts, I mean, we're talking probably about, so this is one part at the beginning, right? Around minute 2 to 3, where Simon plays the odd meter. I'm not quite sure which.
It sounds like an odd meter thing, but I think it's just 4/4 in the end.
The way he accentuates it.
Yeah.
So that would probably be a band performance?
Yes.
Yeah. I just wonder. I'm just wondering because in this really useful book, let me just
chronology, or which one is it?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that's. So we have a description there of all this, usually of all the sessions, and it just says in the summer of 19. This must have been 1990, I would have said probably 1990, yeah. Simon Draper records his drum parts for Mike Oldfield's next album.
Simon Draper?
Yeah, it says here Simon Draper. Simon Phillips. It says Draper here. At Roughwood Croft, Chalfont, St. Giles, Buckinghamshire, England. The sessions take a week, according to the October Sim Info magazine interview. But what about the other musicians? Nothing here. It's just really weird. I mean, sure, maybe we don't know about these sessions.
I mean, like,
but then
I would say it's obvious that at least bass and drums were recorded together.
But then maybe Mike recorded them himself.
No, I mean, you can very clearly hear that it's not Mike playing the bass.
Okay.
The electric bass. It's somebody else. It's this guy Dave, right? And he's doing a great job, by the way. I think it's just a great choice, that player. Incredible, great rock bass player. Like the pumping eighth notes, which you can both find in like Music from the Balcony, right? The Backfish or whatever. Part, right? And also in Mr. Shame, And then like the funny thing is also like the sort of reggae stylings that we get in Give Me Back, and also in music from the balcony. Sort of like the shuffly, yeah. Like even I would even say like there's like a ska vibe somehow in there, like, you know. And it's pretty fascinating. And well, it's not that I'm sure. I know, because you can hear the acoustic drums, you can hear the playing, the real playing from the electronic playing.
Yeah.
It is like I said, it's that collage of elements that we hear. And like speaking of the Fairlight, the Fairlight that we can very clearly identify is that cello sample. That's also the bass part of the very, very last section of the piece. And we first really heard it in Poison Arrows is the track, which has that sound. It's the first time yes, and then it was used on The Killing Fields a lot, that sound. And it made also an appearance on this piece that I pointed out, Music for the Video Wall. On that demo, we have that sound. So anyway, like I think certainly for people who have worked with those keyboards, they can exactly tell you, okay, that Wicca sound is is preset 67, and you know this is the M1 electric piano. This is like everybody, like it's just really kind of like put together with the sounds of the time, but. And that's what makes it fascinating again. So it's the electronic elements, it's the band performances, it's Mike's vocal, it's the background choir, solely kind of background choir. It's the highly futuristic guitar sounds. To me, those are futuristic, still futuristic guitar sounds. And nobody plays like that anymore, what I'd say. It was only Mike at that time. And yeah, and overall, it's just such a creative a mashup. Maybe mashup is a good word here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, it's a collage, a mashup.
And we even have like drum fills, Simon Phillips drum fills that are sort of like solos, like mini solos in between the beautiful, like one of his most beautiful melodies, right, on Music from the Balcony, where Simon has these solo spots.
I mean, overall, I think this is his. I mean, nothing against Crisis, where he's amazing, but I think this is just his album. The drums. There's so much work on the drums and so much incredible feeling.
Yeah.
On side A as well.
And you see, like the cool thing, like all the collaborations of Mike and Simon, they have Simon play the kit slightly differently.
Yeah.
He plays it more like a percussion ensemble, let's say. So where the parts are more written rather than it's not such a physical. It's not coming from physical, but more from a composer perspective, those parts. And here on this record, it's a little bit of both. There are some parts that are sort of like grooves, but then again, they have like certain events, or like where you have like the open hi-hat on the one, or things like that, which are kind of like not very common, let's say, you know? And it's... yeah, I mean, like the more I think about it, the more I'm hearing the unique aspects of this album.
He wasn't on Discovery, right?
Simon, yeah, for sure. He was the co-producer as well.
Yeah. Because I think what I've noticed on side A especially is between different sections of a song, there's always a change in the drums. There's always something. He does something to make that transition, but really subtly, really discreetly. And the same is in the production. So the snare can sound differently within the same song, just nuanced differently from one section to the next. And that's a way in which why these songs, I think many mistake the seamlessness for sort of an over smoothness, an over polishedness. But I just love it. If you listen to it attentively, there's so much to discover. He pulls it together.
He does. And, like now I have had a realization. I think that Gimme Back features a guitar line is a sample from Amarok.
The sort of solo.
Yeah, that's a sample from one of the toys sections, I think, on Amarok. The children's toys sections, and there's a melody on top there, and this is flown into this track. Mini solo. You're right. Exactly. That's how it would happen.
It really sticks out.
It totally sticks out, and I think it's the exact same part, not even replayed. I think it's a sample.
Okay, that could well be. It sounds almost like a sample. Yeah.
And also, as we have, I think maybe we didn't even mention that when we talked about Amarok, but it was also put together with. Like with samplers, where the parts were recorded on a sampler and then played back, and so it makes sense that they had maybe in the archive they had samples from Amarok that they could use. And I mean it's also not a surprise that Music from the Balcony sounds like some people say like an Amarok part 1.5 or
part 4,
or part 4. I don't know.
I think it's very different in sound. I also think the material, but I can see why, yes. I mean, I still think that Amarok has more of a classic structure than many people give it credit for. I think there's its magic comes from the fact that it combines two approaches which are irreconcilable, but it manages to somehow put them together. One of them has this time suspending collage-like approach, and the other is the traditional composition, which moves from a beginning to an end, and it somehow manages to pull it together into one. And this one is less so, but yeah, it definitely. I mean, I think it's also been called the little brother or little sister of Amarok, which I think, yes, makes sense.
So, like one of the very, very striking features of Music from the Balcony is this sort of rhythm that really Mike Oldfield used a lot. It's the 4/3 polyrhythm. So he on Tubular Bells he used those in a couple spaces, right? And has always been kind of like a staple of what he was doing, and he sort of like pulled from that. So for example, like and we talked about that at the beginning, the whole first part, Airborne with Platinum, kind of based on that idea that you have like a 16th feel and a triplet feel coexist at the same time. And here there's a long section, like one of the electronic sections, where the voices appear. What are the words again? You said like
bad fish.
No, the other.
No. No, and do it.
Do it. Yeah, exactly. that is like a long section which has these two fields combined as well.
Okay.
So it's like a really straight quantized triplet.
Yeah.
With the 8th and 16th notes kind of coexisting at the same time, and like depending on which melody you're listening to, you can hear the one subdivision or the other one louder, and it always sounds slightly wrong. And this is something that he's done like very prominently on his next record, on Tubular Bells Part 2. It's like the opening of Tattoo has that, or the intro to Tattoo has that. And also later, and in Return to Omadon, he's doing that too. And it's the section where a lot of people say, "Oh, he can't play in time," because they don't understand this complex rhythm, But anyway, like this is really you can, well, at least I can see that, like he's bringing together some of the more experimental ideas that he's had in his career. yeah, I mean, and I'm just curious, like what cross references, let's say, if are you still hearing here?
I think I mainly had the idea that sort of the opening. So as you said, the opening theme, and then there's is appears later sped up. I think it's similar to the Tubular Bells theme in major. I had music from the balcony, not so much, but I thought that, for example, if you look at something like the title track with the acoustic guitars, it has a reference to Moonlight Shadow. There's lots of the funky stuff from Platinum, not as obviously disco, but actually, I think I would love to be able to listen to the instrumental tracks, so because a lot of the stuff is would be great to hear isolated. Then in Make, I think the lots of the rhythm is actually the same as on Earth Moving. The drums, at least, it's just overlaid with other stuff.
Hey, I'm just
But thematically, it's not a lot. I think
I just realized, fascinated, that Heaven's Open really is the only track that features an acoustic guitar.
yeah,
And the whole, like, rest of the record doesn't really have acoustic guitars.
yeah.
Also, not a single one on Music from the Balcony,
Yeah.
right? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
No, I
there's
think so.
yeah.
I think your opinion that this is really like a guitar album in many respects, and the guitars make this album. That will surprise a lot of people. I think, even because there's not these big, like, with very few exceptions, there's not these huge solos. I mean, No Dream has a huge solo. Heaven's Open has a great solo, but it's pretty short.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guitar work and music from the balcony is eruption, like these intense eruptions.
Yeah, or lyrical.
Or lyrical.
Yes, yes. But played on electric. That is really the difference. Yes.
No, I agree. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, like the more we think about it, the more bizarre it gets somehow.
I think you know,
I'm just saying. Just want to say, when I first heard the music, which I heard on the radio, I guess, before I had the record, or even I went into the record store and listened there or something.
Yeah.
And hearing the voice,
yeah,
I really did not. It didn't process. Like, who is the singer?
yeah.
Is this really Mike? Because it didn't sound like his voice at all. Because I had heard his voice, you know, like whatever, like on horseback, or even the Sally Angie stuff and stuff like that. So it was really a bizarre experience to first listen to this record.
I actually wasn't sure it was him. This was a Mike Oldfield record. I honestly wasn't sure, because I came to it completely. Must have been the release week. And I came into the store and I listened to it on a listening station, and I thought the music was great, but is this a Mike Oldfield record, or is just a guy who happens to have almost the same name?
Interesting. Yeah, what I like about it, like on the back cover, it says songs and music written and sung by Michael Oldfield.
Yeah, just to make sure everybody knows what they're into. Yeah. Well, I guess it's a question of pride.
Yeah.
Looking back, he wasn't satisfied. I think he himself said, or Tom Newman said, that it really was insane work. It was they really did. Yeah, Markus is trying to peel off the sticker, which is...
May I?
You can try, but I don't think it's going to work.
There's
There's a sticker on the back of my CD tray which covers up some of the...
so I need to take the tray out the other way, on the other side, because I'm just curious what it says here. Okay. So produced and engineered by Tom Newman, mixed by Michael Oldfield, assisted by Tom Newman.
It says engineered by, so that's sort of interesting with regards to music from the balcony. If it were engineered by Tom Newman, then his input must be bigger than.
I mean, I have to say that the sound of this record is great.
Yeah.
Again, and it was I think it was still the time of the Harrison console, probably. It doesn't say anything about that here.
No.
But it's a very cool sounding record.
It's a very cool and very different sounding record. I think it's right in the it's right in the middle between something which is very digital and something which is super in the room.
Yes.
And that's what makes it confusing. But I think I love it too. I think it's very visceral. I think it's really, it grips me somehow.
I'm also sometimes, and I remember now, but even back in the day, I thought that this is nothing like a Peter Gabriel record, right? But some sound choices, like the pan flute in Mr. Shame, that sounds like the pan flute from Sledgehammer.
Oh yes.
Yeah, like things like that. So there was some influence of like we know that Peter Gabriel was the one who was experimenting with Fairlight a lot in the early 80s already. Where Mike was using it sort of experimentally on 5 Miles Out, and then it was, I would say, less experimental with it. And so it's funny that maybe this record also could be seen as some sort of like afterthought, like, okay, what could I have done with doing some more experimental stuff or more soundtrack work or whatever. And I think like these things, you can clearly find them in Music from the Balcony.
That could be also true, yes. That could definitely be true, because we know that he wasn't sure what was going to happen after this album. Maybe he knew by then, by the time of Earth Moving, he wasn't so sure. I think when Earth Moving was released, he was sort of contemplating, do I want to do more soundtrack work? Do I want to write for other people? So that could also be true, of course.
So let me ask you. So if we look at the lyrics, so I'm still wondering, make, okay?
Yeah.
So the pre-chorus is Mona Lisa. You can stop searching. Like who is Mona Lisa?
I think it's the Mona Lisa. Isn't that like a symbol for purity?
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear from you.
I guess so. I mean, there's also, I believe, a track by Michael Cretu with his like a side project. It's called Mona Lisa. Isn't it Mona Lisa Overdrive? Actually, isn't that a project name of his? He was obsessed with that too.
Interesting, yeah. And then don't you know we're not virgin, and virgin is capitalized.
And it's actually, actually.
It's ridiculous.
But I think maybe that I'll have a look at because I've said before that sometimes I'm skeptical if he actually wrote some of the lyrics himself, even though it's credited to him. To me, like if you have here, like No Dream, which I think is the best lyrics on the album. An empty chair, is someone sitting there? Footsteps on the ground, can you hear that sound? So that's the way he writes, but it really works. I think in the context of that song, these are really, really powerful lyrics. This ain't no dream. Alone in the night, turn on the light. This ain't no dream. You didn't read this in no book. Go take a look. This ain't no dream. It's super simple, and that's why it's great. And I sometimes think that, yes, you could argue that maybe it's not this album isn't the music isn't that complex like it is on some of the early albums. It was written quickly. But in many respects, it works to its advantage, I think. I think, like, lyric-wise, it's not labored over. It doesn't sound labored. It sounds like it was really written quickly and from the heart. And this one, it's super powerful, I think. I just placed the lyric booklet on the recording, so
on the recording device, so that's not what we... Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a way... when he was making Man on the Rocks. Yeah. And I remember before that happened, he was sort of like, like the few things he wrote on Facebook, then, you know, like you could tell he was dreaming about like making a rock record with a Hammond organ and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So things that he did here,
Yeah.
you know, in a way, it's kind of like a similar, and that's why I agree. Maybe it's just a very heartfelt, quick thing. Don't really think too much. Just create something. And, you know, like with Man on the Rocks, we know that he's sang the demos himself. So it just kind of like makes sense to see these songs more in that vein, you know, of his creative output, where something like Moonlight Shadow, for example, it's more difficult to tell. Like that seems more constructed.
Yep.
You know, for its simplicity, but like it seems more constructed, more, you know. Yeah, I mean, like, thanks for pointing out the Mona Lisa thing. So that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have to look it up, but Enigma and Cretu were also Virgin artists. So
yeah, that's why they had the collaboration. The time has come, I think.
sure.
On the Islands record, that was in '87, so they must, you know.
I mean, you always ask. You're wondering if what he's doing is it conscious, or is it just him like expressing himself through the music? Maybe none of this is that intentional in the sense that it's constructed, but that's I think there's lots of things in the mix here which just flow into the whole thing very naturally.
Yeah, I mean, with Mike Oldfield, the fascination is the whole discography, the whole history, the development. I mean, how could you not find this fascinating? You know, I think like it doesn't really matter. Is this a good record? Is this a bad record? Do I like that song? Do I not like that song? Just the fact of like studying this as a history, as a subject of history, let's say, that's what really is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree about that, but there's like a whole level of there are lots of lessons in this somehow, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's great that there was a person doing this kind of work, like opening himself up to ridicule even.
Yes.
Like, and especially here with with allowing to use his voice, and maybe even in response to the fact that, as you know, like, oh, Moonlight Shadow by Mike Oldfield, but there's a female voice. How can that be? Like, for me, that was obvious because he's a composer and there's somebody singing the song, and it's credited to the composer producer. That should be normal. It was like the other model was kind of wrong, where you would buy a voice, let's say, to sing your song and even put their name and face on the cover.
I mean, why didn't
that was fake?
Why isn't Bach singing his concerto?
Yeah. No, but you know what I mean. Like in a way, like him taking that role was probably also some sort of like psychological reaction to whatever, you know, people were saying or thinking, or maybe he didn't care at all. I mean, that's kind of like what I really believe. In the end, he didn't. But but then, like, you know, like as we've said before, also in his interviews, he never really seems like totally authentic. You know, so I don't know.
I think the clue, the answer is always in the music. I agree. In his interviews, it's hard to find something authentic. It's also hard to find any interview which actually brings something to the surface that you wouldn't be able to find in the music. Now we have all these questions, like in hindsight, and we'd love to know more. But at the time, a lot of these questions just there wasn't the context to ask them, which is a real shame.
Mr. Shame.
Mr. Shame, yes, and you mentioned ridicule. I mean, something like Mr. Shame. That's borderline, and I think for many people it crosses line. But I think that's what makes it great. Also, Gimme Back, also the vocal delivery. You know, there's actually in Gimme Back, there's one part where he sings, "Give me, I want my beat." And the way he sings it, some people thought the CD had a pressing error.
That's ridiculous.
That's really
It's just-
weird. Right?
Yeah, it's just mangled. It's a mangled treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like on the sampler, probably. You know. So
By the way, because you mentioned the instrumentals on the B side and the songs on the A side, I think can we also maybe see the first side as a suite, especially if it's conceptual, but like the end of the first side has more of this typical classic Mike Oldfield finale that we know from his instrumental works almost on the B side. I think, you know, the end of Heaven's Open is almost in tone and the way it's done, almost like the Amarok finale, just in very
yeah,
small.
yeah, I agree. And like in a way, the sassy choir
Yeah.
is sort of like the sort of like the remains of the African choir in Amarok somehow.
And I've also thought that like the piano motif at Heaven's Open in the beginning, it also is this like a very small tribute to reference to the Tubular Bells theme. And maybe, you know, at one point, of course, you start hearing it all everywhere. But
Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of interesting what you just said. It is more of a precursor to the opening of Tubular Bells too. Yeah, with that piano, that little, that beautiful tune that he calls it beautiful tune, I think, puts that before the first theme, which is the first theme on the original record. So
yes,
yes, and in a way, and so an intro to
the intro,
to the intro.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is right that. And I'm wondering if this really was Mickey Simmons playing the piano.
I've asked myself if did he play it himself?
I mean, it says that Mickey Simmons plays Hammond and piano, so it could be, and Mike is just credited with keyboards. So this would be interesting to find out. I think, like Mickey, we should definitely try to talk with Mickey at some point.
I've also read the fact that he plays the Hammond also means that indicates where it would have been recorded, but I'm not sure if it Hammond somewhere doesn't matter now.
Do you think that they recorded it in some other studio, or they
I've read the theory, but I
yeah. I mean, it makes sense because you don't really want to transport a Hammond.
Exactly.
But people did, so and that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, and Mike never really used a Hammond.
No.
On his records.
I think this is like a first, could it be? Or maybe...
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I was just... I think the finale of like No Dream, that the ending, that is so great. There's two shifts in dynamic where it really builds and builds and the Hammond in the background and then the almost... descent into madness by the singers, and then the guitar solo on top, which is also, I think, it's a different kind of guitar solo.
It's great. It's just a great. It's like it's the way that nobody else plays. I have to say again that there's nobody who plays with that kind of. It's so difficult to describe because, like, it may be like the most bluesy thing he's ever done, but at the same time, there's no blues in it at all.
Yeah.
So it's just incredible. Like he's playing melodies. It doesn't have the feel of a solo. It's not a solo as an improvised solo. It's something that is just like an inevitable utterance of the being, let's say. There's just something that comes out as maybe the thing that he failed to do with the singing. I mean, if you want to think of it as failed, I don't think of it that way. But like his guitar playing is really that pure delivery of whatever is speaking through the musician, you know.
So when you, I think the remix, there may have been a remix. I'm not quite sure, but
Remix?
yeah, of this one, just like a retouch. Not sure. It says 2000 remake, like a remix from 2000. Not sure.
Ah, remaster.
Remaster. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that one is a little bit smoother. If you listen to it, when I listen to it on a regular, like a stereo system, on headphones, I feel like the solo is really mixed, like a vocal.
Yeah.
It's really really on top. It's not mashing with the rest that much. It's really on top, and it always has this quality. Like there was this early vocoder, like a talk. I think it's called a talk box. Or
Yeah,
box.
talk box. Yeah.
It's almost like singing through that.
Yeah, it's the wah-wah
Yeah.
he started using on that's part of that guitar sound that I mentioned before. You know, like I just had another association which really only comes back now. The Christa Berg albums from the 80s. There's something in this also in Heaven's Open that is sort of influenced by that, or a continuation of that.
Yes, the darker songs.
The darker songs of Christa Berg, yeah. And the Rupert Hine productions.
Yes, that is true, actually. Never thought of it.
Yes. Yeah, and interesting that this isn't like you would say, okay, it's already 91. It's not an 80s production, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
It's more so than Amarok.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Do you have an idea about the fade out of Make Make? I mean, we're jumping all across the board now, but
That's fine.
I've always wondered this. It always seemed like a mistake to me.
If I remember correctly, it fades out, but it actually ends.
Yes, it ends in the fade out.
It ends in the fade out.
It sounds like they're taking out the rhythm, and then the keyboards come to the fore. So that would have been a very nice way to close it, or to keep it just like running for a little bit longer. And then, then they decide to fade it out, and then it ends in the fade out. And then actually, I think on the tape, but this is so long ago, I can't like know for sure anymore. I think there's a little bit of bleed in like between some of the songs. It's really weird.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
But definitely the fade out to make it sounds like an obvious mistake, and it definitely wasn't fixed in 2000.
I think it's certainly not a mistake, but I think we talked about this before. Is there any other fade out really that I think then you said it's Omadon, like the drumming fades out. That's true, but that I would not.
That could just be getting quiet and quiet.
Yes, yeah. So that is not. But there was one other track.
Mike?
Yes, that we identified where it was sort of like fade out, and that's when we were thinking back to Omadon. But anyway, yes, it's a very, very rare thing for Mike Oldfield to have a fade out. Like where in popular music it was common practice.
No Dream actually fades out. That's a nice fade out.
Yes, but I'm talking not about this record. So in general, like in his catalog, there are very few fade outs.
Yes.
And very few fade ins. Fade in is nothing but on Earth Moving.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually a great use of the fade in.
Yes. Yes.
No, but it's true. Actually, even the music from the balcony ends. It has an end. It doesn't fade out, although it fades out. But then you actually hear someone saying something, whatever that may be, and then it actually ends.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no. You can't play it in a loop. It's not like this idea of something like the thing just going in a loop. That's not here.
No.
Anyway, I just said I was just wondering. Always thought that really, really weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a mistake. It maybe it was just sort of, okay, like I don't know. How could we end this? Do I have to write an actual end to this? And it would also be wrong, I guess, in the context of this song to develop it. Because I think that was like sort of the idea of the song also, in a way that, as you say, it's not about the content so much. So rather than working on the content to the end, we'll just fade it out.
Yeah.
you know. So like a decision that not a musician but an A&R person would have made.
Yeah. Well, I mean, could also have just been in like when they were mixing in the 80s, especially, it was always very so didn't they mix it so that there was they heard it was too much bass, and that's why there wasn't enough bass in the I'm not sure. Anyway, I was just wondering if maybe they just didn't hear they thought it was faded out.
Yes. And you know, Heavens Open, there was a single,
Yeah.
a CD single. I at this time I was already buying the CD versions. I never owned the vinyl version of this album, or I never had there was Gimme Back and Heavens Open were both released. I think, excuse me, Gimme Back was, I don't know if there's a vinyl of that, but there was CD single. And funnily enough, because at that time they didn't have B-sides, they put excerpts of Amarok.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Heavens Open has, like, there are two really distinct versions,
Yeah.
as you probably know. Yeah.
Do you have preference?
I don't. No, I don't. I don't want to say I have a preference. I think they're both cool.
I'm just curious why he changed it. It's the guitar melody is really noticeably different.
Yeah.
And that's the one he actually the single version is actually different. And so when he went on German TV on this huge show that Dassen played, looking like with his hair, shoulder long hair, and an earring. He played that version, the different version.
He played the single or
He played the single version.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah, the single version
Yeah.
was the one that was for radio. Yeah, I mean, why not? I think it's a cool thing to have different versions of your songs, and that's the way that usually people worked. Like there were versions, and then you picked one for the album, and then sometimes if you could just release another version. I'm actually doing that on my next record.
Playing
There's a single which has the single is called Love Theme. And it is the same track as on the album, but it's a slightly different mix. So,
By the way, this is something about recording or the writing of Heavens Open, where in an interview, this is what Mike said. We were running into trouble with that song while making it. Tom Newman, who produced it, was quite friendly with David Gilmour. There was this little pub in West London where people would just turn up and jam. I went there and just jammed a few times. Once David, which is David Gilmour, was there, and he very kindly offered to come out and listen to the track and help us out a bit. He made some subtle suggestions, and I think he got co-producer credit on that track. I don't think he did, but David Gilmour on
yeah, David Gilmour, interesting contact, right? Because we know that Mike was a big fan, and Mike was seen at Pink Floyd shows. I've heard those stories, and yeah, I mean, like there's one other thing that may be interesting for some. As a composer myself, I hardly ever quote themes exactly from other sources, right? But there is one quote I made of a Mike Oldfield melody, and believe it or not, it's a melody from Music from the Balcony. And I've kind of like left it mostly intact. It's a song called "A White Cake Sky" from a record called Pole, and I lifted one of those melodies, put it in a different modal context.
yeah.
But so saying that this record hasn't left an impression with me would be super wrong.
Yeah.
Because like it's the only like clear reference, Oldfield reference I've ever made is actually taken from this record.
Wasn't there one from, I'm not sure if that's an official release, but from Music from the Spheres?
Oh yeah, that's the backwards track. Yeah, On My Heart, I used that backwards in a piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, unless we actually listen to this together and do like a reaction video, I think we've sort of covered most things.
Yeah,
like there's much more. I mean, you have so many notes. Is there anything?
No, but actually, there was one thing, because we recently there were two things which we could just very briefly go into. One is because when we were talking last week, and you said I'm listening to Happens Open, and I said I'm listening to stuff which in connection, and I had two albums. One is Millions Now Living Will Never Die by Tortoise, and the other one is Stereo Lab, Dots and Loops. And so why did I listen to them? Because these are sort of have the same idea of using band performances and placing them in an electronic context.
Yes.
And they're both
Made by the same guy.
John McIntyre produced both of them.
Yeah.
So that's why they have a very similar sound. It's really, I think I can recommend these compositions.
Yeah.
Dots
and Loops is one of my favorite albums.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, the long track of this one, you have to help me with the name, actually. I don't know. There's a 17-minute track on this one.
Yes.
That's actually really interesting because it's almost like a remake. It remixes itself. So you have the first 4 to 5 minutes, or actually longer. I think it's the first section is long, and then you have a second section which uses the same lyrics. So it uses themes and lyrics across that. It's really interesting. And then, of course, the long 20-minute track, Jed, the opening track on Millions Now Living Will Never Die. I've always thought about Mike Oldfield when I listen to that. I think that's wrong. It's probably just Philip Glass, the way the Glockenspiel on marimba.
Yeah.
But that one is more, I think, the way it's done, it's more like a Kraftwerk, actually, because it has the closing section of that piece is actually a slowed down version of the beginning, which is like what Kraftwerk did on Autobahn.
Yeah.
But I kind of listened to them, and still, these were made in 1996. I think they're great. Also, this was a time when lots of people from that sort of scene were doing stuff like that. But it's 6 years, like 5 to 6 years later, and I still think it's less adventurous. So it was really interesting to me to listen to them. And I still think they're more conventional. It's just like the editing is just they're editing together different parts, and the electronics sort of give it this slightly quirky alien feeling. But still, I think Music from the Balcony is weirder.
It's certainly weirder.
And
certainly.
Yeah.
I think you're raising a very, very important question here, something that I think at some point we or somebody needs to have a discussion. What really is the influence of Mike Oldfield on the music scene at large?
Yeah, it would be.
Because I think a lot of people, they for whatever reason, there is sort of like a negative connotation with Oldfield. I don't get it personally, okay? But then when I'm talking with fellow musicians, right? And like my fellow musicians, the age range is like, I don't know, from 30 to 75 or 78 even right now, right? Knowing that most of them listen to Mike Oldfield, and not just listen, but they would say, well, I listened to this record for 3 years. Or, like people that have, like my friend Tim Mozart writes to me regularly, like him listening to Markus Rich again. And wow, so it happens all the time. And so since Mike Oldfield wasn't so present in the US, I would agree that Tortoise, for example, probably they don't really know, like you say, like then the influence would be Philip Glass or Steve Reich, or
it's a guess,
yes, it's a guess, but I think that there is really a lot to discover still about how Mike's very creative and experimental use of technology and musical ideas, and like also, as we've said, like the connection with David Bedford, so contemporary classical, like how all of that really kind of found its way into approaches. And as we said, like Mike Oldfield hardly ever has anything bluesy about it. Like it's like, or you know, he doesn't use dominant seventh chords, which is like the most prominent compositional device in most other rock music or popular music. He's in his whole career he used it once or twice, at the most. You know, like, and so there's a certain power, I think, of his work that has either, you could say, not been accepted or not been recognized, but on the other hand, it has permeated everything. Yeah, and yeah, I mean this wacky sampling stuff and blah, I don't know, you know, just like what happened to Klaus Schulze at the beginning of the '80s when he used the first sampler, and you know, like so it was just really experimental, really. I would say I don't think that this kind of work was effortless. I don't think so.
This one, no,
not effortless, but but kind of I don't. What's the word? Again, like you're like daring, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe the end of the contract subconsciously made him not care, in a sense, like not care, but it allowed him to just release it as it was. You know, to just there was no demoing, there was no versioning, there was no work in progress.
With the exception of Fed Up.
Yeah, exactly. But I think maybe this was sort of that. This could have been sort of a demo or a draft, but he just released it as is.
Yeah.
And
no, I don't think I wouldn't say that it's a demo. I think that's wrong.
No, I mean,
but on the other hand, like he had just done I'm a Rock. I mean, how crazy is that to even just keep working after making Amarok?
Yeah.
Like it's really insane. And I think like he didn't and never really had to prove himself, yet he always did. So, and here, this example, he was singing the songs himself. And that alone is sort of, like I said, from like that historic perspective.
yeah.
It's just amazing.
I don't know if this is going too long at the very end. This is something I wanted to share because I thought it was really interesting. Maybe we can expand on this at some other point. I was reading I think it's called Blue Hours or Blue Nights by Joan Didion. I just have to look because I was reading it in German. I'm not quite sure what the English original title is. Blue Nights. It's called Blue Hours in German, and she describes how she writes in this. So, and I had to think of this especially in regards with Music from the Balcony. So the way she does it is, she creates a sort of a form. She creates a form. So there will be something like XX said, he said, XXX she said, how she did this and why she did that and which music was going and so forth. So she creates sort of maybe you can see like a
it's like a template.
A template, yeah, that's the word. So it creates a template, and the template has a rhythm, has a groove, and a flow to it, and she does that across a whole page or 2 pages.
Yes.
And there's no story there then. And then she fills out the template with actual content, with people. Yes. She populates the template.
Yes.
And then she gets the page. And she says, so what I put in there, is the story. So that's the content is generated by the form, by the template. It's not generated by the story, what we usually see. And then she says,
I mean, you're talking about Tubular Bells too.
Yeah, and she's saying, I don't have any idea about music, she says, but I would imagine that's how musicians would think. While I was reading, I thought maybe that's how someone like Mike Oldfield approaches it as well. Maybe not like sketching out like a template per se, but thinking about it like we think about rhythm as something which happens on like a percussive basis and like putting one snare after the bass. Maybe he's thinking about it in musical structures.
No, I think, and that's something we've pointed out a few times already. I think what is so amazing about Mike Oldfield is that he does both.
Yeah.
He has the totally intuitive, earthy, like feet on the ground, kind of folkloristic, intuitive musical expression. And at the same time, he has the intellect to create a template, to develop themes, right? To avoid certain kind of chord. It's just like, it's incredible, right? You know, and I think that's really what we need to understand about Mike Oldfield, and that's also again why this record is so fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's there is sort of the suggestion that it can be figured out, but it cannot, and that is sort of, it creates a tension, but like a positive tension, I think.
yeah. I mean, I'm always fascinated, like being on these, like, I have to say it, Facebook groups about Mike Oldfield's music, where somebody says, "Oh, I hate this record," and then 25 people write, "Oh, this is my favorite."
Yeah. Although actually, I looked up. You also get these polls where people will rate their most like favorite albums.
Yeah.
I think Heaven's Open actually, I haven't seen a single one who actually said Heaven's Open is my favorite Mike Oldfield album. There's actually people who's like Earth Moving will say Earth Moving, but this one I have seen very few people. It's one of my favorite ones. It's
but like anyway, like if I don't even know or want to know if Mike is listening to this. But anyway, like I have to say it again, thank you. It's just great stuff. And no matter what people think, you know, and it's always enriching, you know, and yes, so again, just one last thing, maybe there's always this combination of the sublime and ineffable with actual craft.
Yeah.
And this album is no exception to that.
Absolutely. I think it's so fascinating to have Amarok and this one side by side, because it questions this idea of, greatness. What is greatness? It's very easy to say Amarok is great. And it's also easy for people to say, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And with this one, they can much more easily say, no, it's just crap. It's just shallow. But I think with them side by side, it really makes that distinction and makes that whole terminology, greatness, makes it look ridiculous, I think.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that is maybe the biggest takeaway from this trilogy, Earth Moving, Amarok, and Heaven's Open, right, is that there is, like, we need to be very careful to judge.
Yes. And by the way, there's another trilogy in the sense of Crises, Islands, and Heaven's Open. It's also like a sort of a trilogy.
That's true. And obviously 5 Miles Out, Crisis, and Discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, the album cover.
Yeah.
That's another really interesting subject that also points to us, or to him finishing that virgin face.
Yeah.
Right. So the egg, the cracked egg, which originally was like Cherokee's idea, I think, to have as the cover for Tubular Bells, with the blood pouring out.
Yeah.
and they used this for his final Virgin label.
Do you know if this was supposed to be the cover for Tubular Bells or for the album at that time tentatively referred to as Breakfast in Bed?
Well, I think that was the same music.
The same music, definitely, but the breakfast theme fits more with the egg, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, like I don't know the exact series of events.
Yeah.
But yeah, here the egg actually is the sky, the heaven, and there's some sort of yolky stuff pouring out. It's not blood.
It's like golden.
Yeah, and then it looks as if like these pigeons or doves, I think, probably is a better word, um, are sort of like flying on top of this egg shell, broken egg shell.
The birds are those came later, I suppose.
Yes, they were put on top of this. Yes, but it's just fascinating. Like, okay, so liberation, flying, breaking the shell, all sorts of interesting things. Yeah, I guess.
World peace.
Well, peace, whatever. Like, there's no reference to this other than, like the heavens open, the crack open, crack in the sky, kind of.
In the lyrics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would have to have a look at the lyrics, but I think there is this idea that you're contained and you're locked up. That's, I think, in Make, if I remember well. There's something there you can't get out, and you can't get. What does it say? The opening lines of Make.
Oh, yeah. There's no way out. There's no way in.
There's no way out. There's no way. Okay, maybe. I mean, an egg is not exactly the best prison metaphor, but
yeah, but for like birth and like
yeah.
rebirth. in this case, yeah.
Do you think that would have been a good cover for Tubular Bells? It's like,
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been iconic, I guess, the way
it would have been iconic, but maybe it would have caused a very different impression of the music.
Yeah. Not even the Tubular Bells, but that beach scene. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, like, okay,
I've never read anything about the original cover. I mean, I don't know, an egg and blood.
Yes.
That must have been really. Do you think there's a concept, or is it just he went for something like a gut feeling? It's really an interesting choice.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure that there's information out there about this. Yeah.
Yeah, but it ties in indeed with ending the Virgin chapter. This is sort of the cover of the original cover his album was going to have had, and he's now singing under the name which Richard Branson suggested he take, like his given name. Ties it up nicely. It's definitely better than going for the computer graphics which are on the back.
Yeah, the Mandelbrot set.
Yeah.
Right. This is also very interesting choice.
Yeah.
Like points towards the nerdiness of it.
Yeah. It's not entirely. I kind of think it fits. It just maybe from looking from today, it would have been slightly cliched. Back then, it probably wasn't.
So also, like, there's a credit in here for Richard Berry, who was the engineer who built Mike's studios, I think, and he's credited with boffinry. And I don't know what that means.
Is he credited in the booklet? Oh, here, yeah.
Yeah.
Boffinry, interesting.
Yeah, and I can't find that word in the dictionary. I mean, in my dictionary.
Maybe
Here it is.
buffoonery.
Okay, let's wrap it up for today.
Yeah, and then we're also wrapping up the Virgin years in album terms. Definitely.
Well, we will go back.
Yeah, we'll go
right? But go back to the albums we haven't spoken about. Exposed, The Killing Fields,
Yep.
and the singles.
And the singles.
Yeah. Okay.
But next, okay, we'll figure this out, whether we'll move first to Tubular Bells 2 or wrap up the remains.
Yes. Okay, thanks for listening, and be in touch. Please leave your comments or send an email. Thank you.
Bye bye.